log file for sensor 4 showed 28,000 liters of displacement moving upstream against the current on a Tuesday at 3 in the morning. But when I pulled the optical back up, the water level in the culvert hadn't risen a single millimeter. I worked contract maintenance for Fisheries and Oceans Canada in the late fall of 2018, servicing 3 remote hydro-acoustic salmon counting stations along the Yakoun River watershed on Haida Gwaii. My job was straightforward. Swap out the lithium battery banks, download the raw data logs from the submerged sonar transducers, and clear debris buildup around the grates before winter rains hit. Each station is just a small steel shelter anchored to a concrete pad near the riverbank, connected to submerged sonar frames that log passing fish by volume and movement silhouette. Station 2 sits 9 kilometers off an old logging mainline near the center of the island. You drive in on a quad, unlock the steel door, plug in a toughbook, and run a system diagnostic. On November 14th, the diagnostic threw a checksum error on channel 2. That meant the primary memory card mounted inside the underwater unit had desynchronized from the secondary backup drive inside the shelter rack. When I pulled the physical drive out of its casing inside the shelter, the drive was dry, but the timestamp log was scrambled. It showed 42 separate file writes between 1:15 a.m. and 4:00 a.m. the previous night. Every entry was flagged with the same system tag, manual calibration override. That did not make sense. Manual overrides require a physical serial connection from a handheld terminal plugged directly into the port inside the locked shelter. There is no cellular signal in that river valley, and no remote network access. To force a manual calibration, someone had to open the shelter door, unlock the inner rack cabinet, insert a patch cable, and enter a 4-digit technician code. My supervisor at the regional office in Prince Rupert was the only other person with clearance, and he had been on medical leave in Nanaimo for that entire week. I sat on a milk crate inside the shelter, with rain hammering against the iron roof, looking at the event log on my screen. I opened the register to see what parameters had been altered during those 3 overnight hours. Whoever plugged into the terminal didn't adjust the sonar gain or clear the hydrophone registers. They ran a forced loop test on the channel 3 acoustic sensor, the underwater hydrophone mounted to the riverbed frame, and routed the live raw audio feed directly into the shelter's internal storage bank. These field stations are not built to record continuous audio. They are designed only to trigger short 3-second bursts when an object over 10 kilograms interrupts the sonar beam. But this override command forced the system to record 4 straight hours of uncompressed audio directly onto the local drive. I plugged in my headphones and played the first audio file recorded at 1:15 a.m. At first, it was just cold river water moving over gravel and the low electrical hum of the transducer head. But around 12 minutes in, the water sound quieted down significantly. Not because the river flow had decreased, but because something large had settled into the narrow channel directly in front of the frame, blocking the current. Then came a sound that made no sense for an automated counting station on an isolated logging road. It was the metallic clinking of a ratcheting socket wrench being used underwater, followed immediately by the dull, wet thud of something heavy striking the fiberglass housing of the submerged frame. Then came two sharp, deliberate taps against the casing, like a person knocking firm knuckles against a heavy front door. I took off my headphones and stared down at the concrete shelter floor. A square steel hatch set into the concrete floor gives access to the dry PVC conduit pipe running underground from the shelter directly out beneath the riverbed. That conduit carries the signal cables from the water frames into the rack inside. It is a 6-inch industrial pipe packed with water-resistant foam sealant at both ends to keep water from backing up into the room. The hatch cover was held down by 4 6mm hex bolts. 3 of those bolts were sitting neatly on top of the metal junction box beside my feet, stripped clean of grease. The 4th bolt was still in its threaded hole, but backed out half a turn loose. Underneath the lip of the steel hatch frame, sticking out by half an inch, was a folded strip of blue shop towel. It was cold, damp, stained with dark grease, and pinched completely flat where the cover plate had been set back down on top of it. I did not open that hatch plate. I did not finish the battery replacement either. I packed my laptop into my canvas kit, locked the equipment rack, padlocked the outer door, and rode the quad straight back to the highway. When I submitted my field report to the district office in Queen Charlotte the next morning, I attached the diagnostic logs and noted the unbolted floor plate. 2 days later, a senior safety inspector from Vancouver called my personal mobile. He did not ask about the audio files, the override code, or the sonar readings. He asked whether I had touched the towel, whether I had mentioned the report to anyone else on the island, and if I had noticed any fresh tire tracks along the logging mainline near the stream. When I told him heavy rainfall had washed the road clean before I arrived, he stayed silent for several long seconds. Then he informed me that my contract for the remainder of the season was being settled in full, and that a mainland crew would be taking over all remaining site visits immediately. Last winter, while searching public provincial tender notices online, I came across an official contract posting for the complete decommission and removal of Station 2. The job specifications called for 4,000 liters of poured structural concrete to completely fill the underground cable conduit, followed by total site remediation. The project line item was listed under environmental containment, but the funding was not coming from Fisheries and Oceans Canada. It was being paid directly out of an undisclosed contingency account belonging to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.